Last October, one midfielder was left out of his national team squad entirely, a decision that raised real questions. At the time, his club form had dipped, and his place among the country's best midfielders looked genuinely uncertain. The national team's new head coach challenged him publicly more than once in the months leading into this tournament. Whatever passed between them clearly landed. By June, the midfielder was not just selected, but central to the plan. Few expected, even then, just how large a role he'd end up playing across the tournament that followed. His country arrived with real ambitions, chasing a first men's World Cup title since the 1960s. The squad blended proven experience with a wave of promising younger talent, on paper a genuinely strong group. Early results were solid without being spectacular, the kind of form that raises quiet questions rather than answers them. It was in the tighter, more stressful matches that the midfielder's specific value started becoming genuinely obvious. Keep his October absence in mind. What follows is one of the tournament's clearest redemption stories. In the group stage, trailing late against a well-organized opponent, he scored to put his team back in front. Against another group opponent, he opened the scoring and set up a second goal just minutes later. The round of 32 brought a tighter test, settled by a crucial last-ditch defensive contribution as much as an attacking one. The round of 16 brought a fierce regional rival and a match that swung heavily on individual quality. He scored twice in the first half alone, a personal double that effectively decided the outcome by itself. That result advanced his team to the quarterfinals against a surprise package still riding a wave of belief.
This match proved far tougher than expected. A tense, error-strewn contest played in genuinely difficult heat.
His team fell behind early to a well-taken opposing strike and struggled for long stretches to find rhythm. Just before halftime, he found an equalizer, a composed finish that steadied a shaky first-half performance. The match went scoreless through the rest of regulation time, forcing an extra 30 minutes to settle it. Early in extra time, he struck again, his second goal of the match and sixth of the tournament overall. That goal proved decisive, sending his team through to the semifinals for the first time in years. 6 goals from a midfielder is a genuinely rare tally, more than any midfielder has ever scored at a single World Cup. He'd now been the difference maker in 4 of his team's 6 matches, an unusually high rate of direct impact. Statistically, he became just the second player in decades to score in back-to-back knockout matches with a brace each time. The only other player to manage that specific feat was one of the sport's most storied figures, decades earlier. None of this arrived without visible strain. Cameras caught him gasping for breath in the heat during the quarterfinal. The altitude and temperature at several venues clearly took a toll on his team more than most expected. After the quarterfinal win, the head coach was notably blunt in his assessment of the overall performance. He called the win fortunate and criticized the team's sloppier moments, even in a match they'd just won. The midfielder, asked about those comments, offered a pointed response of his own in a separate interview. He noted that winning ugly is sometimes simply what advancing in a tournament actually requires. Pundits described the exchange as a clash of 2 strong personalities, both fully justified in their own way. Former players praised the tension as healthy, a sign of genuinely high standards on both sides of the conversation. One respected former international went further, calling the midfielder's tournament impact unlike anything he'd witnessed. Another suggested he could end up being remembered as the greatest player his country has ever produced. That's an enormous claim for a player still only in his early 20s, with plenty of career still ahead. It reflects, though, just how directly his individual performances have mapped onto his team's results this summer. 5 of his 6 goals either leveled a match or put his team ahead at a critical moment. That's a specific kind of impact statistic, less about volume and more about exactly when the goals arrived. It's the difference between padding a stat line and repeatedly changing the actual outcome of a match. A former teammate turned opponent on the losing side of the quarterfinal offered praise rather than bitterness afterward. The two had played together at club level years earlier, adding a personal layer to that specific result. None of this guarantees anything about the semifinals still ahead against a heavily decorated defending champion.
This video won't predict how that next match goes. That result genuinely isn't decided yet.
What's already clear, regardless of what happens next, is the shape of the turnaround since last October. A player left out of a squad entirely became, within months, the single most talked about performer at a World Cup. That kind of turnaround doesn't happen by accident. It usually reflects a genuinely uncomfortable period of self-examination. Being publicly challenged by a new head coach isn't pleasant, but it clearly produced a measurable response. Whether that dynamic continues to work depends heavily on results, the way most manager-player relationships eventually do. Right now, the results speak clearly enough on their own, regardless of how the underlying relationship is described. 6 goals, 4 match-defining performances, and a run to the semifinals nobody outside the camp fully expected in June.
That's an unusually complete tournament for any player, let alone one coming off a squad exclusion months earlier.
It also puts real weight on the next match, the biggest test yet against a defending champion missing nothing. Whatever happens there, the story of this specific tournament for this specific player is already remarkable. A team's best player being excluded from a squad, then returning to carry it to the Final Four, is rare. It's the kind of arc that gets replayed for years afterward, regardless of how the tournament ultimately ends. Sports fans tend to remember redemption stories longer than they remember steady, uneventful consistency. This one has all the specific ingredients: public doubt, a pointed challenge, and a response delivered on the biggest stage. Whether it ends with a trophy or simply a remarkable individual tournament is still genuinely unresolved. Either way, the shape of the story from October to now is already worth remembering on its own terms. A manager's public doubt became, whether intended or not, part of the fuel behind this specific turnaround. That's an uncomfortable lesson for anyone hoping motivation always comes from encouragement rather than pressure. Different players clearly respond to different approaches, and this specific pairing seems to have found something that works. Whether that continues past this tournament is a question for another year, another cycle, another set of headlines. For now, the immediate story is simpler. A player once left out is now one match from a World Cup final. That's a genuinely remarkable distance to cover in under a year by almost any reasonable measure. It's also a reminder that international careers rarely move in a straight line, even for the most talented players. Dips, exclusions, and public criticism are often part of the story, not exceptions to how these careers usually work. What matters in the end is less the shape of the dip and more the shape of what follows it. This particular player's response to his dip has been about as complete an answer as a tournament allows. 6 goals, a semifinal berth, and a level of praise from former greats that's genuinely difficult to overstate. None of that erases the October headlines. It simply sits alongside them, part of the same larger story. Sports stories rarely get to choose a tidy single narrative. Usually, both chapters end up true at once. Left out in October, central to a semifinal run by July, both sentences describe the exact same player. That contrast is, on its own, one of the more compelling storylines this entire tournament has produced. Whatever comes next in the semifinal, that specific turnaround has already secured its place in this tournament story. Some comebacks get measured in minutes on a scoreboard, others get measured in months from a squad list to a semifinal.